I am so thrilled to be able to introduce a colleague and friend. Brandon and I worked together at Trine University. We have both moved away from there, and Brandon has continued to be the most passionate advocate for ethical sport that I've ever met. And I just so enjoy learning from him how to frame athletics in a way that everyone is included and everyone is cared for and everyone is just challenged to be successful and joyful in engaging in sport. Brandon, I'm so excited that you're here. Brandon is going to share with us the idea of youth culture, youth sports culture, and how it's really become something that isn't necessarily always that joyful opportunity that we hope it will be. He's going to give us some suggestions of how we can be advocates for bringing the joy back to sport. Brandon, thank you for coming from the sports leadership program at Abilene Christian University and sharing your expertise with us here on the Zoom.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Corey. It's truly an honor to be a part of this. Excited to talk about something that I'm passionate about. So a little housekeeping first. If you want to follow along, I put in the chat my presentation if you would like to check that out. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. And my assumption is that everybody can see it. So if you can't see the red slide with the University of Olivet in my name, just please pipe up and let me know. And I'll go through this presentation. And unfortunately, I tend to talk a little bit quickly. So if I need to slow down, just let me know. But I'm happy to take questions at the end. So bear with me as now, as Dr. Corey said, I'm in a new role. So for the past year, I've been at Abilene Christian University. I'm the program director for our sport leadership programs, and we have a master's program and an undergrad program. And Abilene Christian is located in Abilene, Texas, but my programs are online, so I work remote. So after being in the classroom for about the better part of a decade, I now work remote. I've went from saying, I think, somewhere between 3,000 to 4,000 words a day to about 300 to 400. So we'll see how long my voice is going to last for you today. But I'm excited to talk about courageous and compassionate leadership in sport. And as Dr. Corey said, this is something that I'm passionate about because I grew up being an athlete. I've had a lot of good coaches. I've had some coaches who were just okay. And I've been coaching myself, and I've been coaching for the better part of the past 25 years. And the way that I wanted to start off this particular session was with a story. It was an opinion article, and it was something that was put in our local paper. And I've hid the name of the paper to kind of protect those who I'm going to call out in the comments section. And this opinion piece, it was put out on Facebook. And I want to give a little bit of background before I kind of go into the comments and embarrass some people. But this opinion piece, it was written by Dr. Raja Ramaswamy. So he's a physician, and it was a heartfelt reflection on the state of youth sport, both from his role as a parent with kids in sport and as a physician. And so while he celebrates the joy and value of youth sport, he also warns that we've shifted. There's been a massive shift in youth sport from play to performance. And my assumption in this presentation today is that a lot of you might be, my age. You might be in your 40s, your 50s, 60s, and then we may have some from a younger generation, which is going to be really interesting, especially college students, and just how sport, how play kind of presented and manifested itself for us as kids to what it looks like now, because it looks vastly different. And I think that's something that it's hard for people to kind of get their minds around. So anyways, in this op-ed here, in this opinion, part of this shift from just play and going out and having fun to performance, and we're going to use the word professionalization in this presentation, it's fueled by unrealistic expectation and adult egos. So a lot of this, unfortunately, it's kind of being driven by us as parents. and the $20 billion youth sport industry. And that's something that I'm going to get to here in just a little bit. And I want you to keep that number in the back of your mind. $20 billion youth sport industry. So there's a lot of people getting rich off the backs of youth athletes. And so what's happened because of this? Well, we've had widespread burnout for kids, overuse injuries, and rising anxiety among children. I've got a 6-year-old son. The only thing that he really should be anxious about is mom cooking vegetables for dinner tonight or not? Or am I getting pizza? That should be like his biggest worry in the world. But now with kids, they're getting anxious about going to practice, about going to training, about going to games. And it should be fun. And I'm going to come back to that word fun. I'm going to use it probably about 200 times today. And so in this opinion piece, Dr. Ramaswamy urges parents, we got to reset. We got to prioritize joy over results, joy over results, joy over results. We got to allow kids to fail without fear. And that could be a really hard thing for a parent to do. It's just allowing kids, seeing their kids fail. And I don't think any parent, like, we're trying to hold our child back, but sometimes failure can be a great teacher within kind of a supportive, safe environment. And we've got to avoid specialization, which I'll talk about here in just a little bit. And we got to remember that youth sports should be about the kids, not scholarships, not social media, not our ambitions as adults, but it should be about the kids. So that's the question that I'm going to continue to go back to in this presentation here. Is it about the kids? What we're doing about the kids. So that was the shot. Here's the chaser. Here were some of the comments that I pulled off of Facebook. Give them all a participation trophy. That'll make them better competitors. Not. And I really appreciate the not. Being somebody who grew up in the 90s with Wayne and Garth, I kind of thought that was kind of funny. All right. Give them all a participation trophy. That'll make them better competitors. Not. One thing that I'm not a participation trophy guy. I don't necessarily have anything against it. I don't believe you should be rewarded just for doing the bare minimum. However, it's not the worst thing in the world if a kid gets one. It's not going to make them non-competitive. It's not going to ruin their joy. It's not going to hurt their development. But the one thing that I am against is pushing kids too early before they're ready. Next comment, grades, and this one's a little hard to read. I'm going to try to translate it as best I can for you. Grades 1 through 5 to play sport. If you're 6 through 8, gets more competitive. 9 through 12, ooh, you better not suck or you benched. And then he used 3 crying emojis, and I haven't figured out a way to put emojis in here. Way it should be. Now you ingrain education and that they will become smarter, better athletes. So grammatical murder aside, what I think this person is trying to say is that when you're young, going through grades 1 through 5, you're just learning, it's play, it's fun, it's all that. It starts to get a little bit more serious and competitive as you get into middle school. And then in high school, only the best players should play. Well, from a competitive standpoint, sure, there's some legs to that argument. The problem that we're seeing in youth sport, and I'm going to come back to this stat, 70% of kids by the age of 13 drop out of youth sport. And what we find is kids who stay in sports, stay physically active, long term, they continue that physical activity. So right now, we really do have an obesity epidemic in this country where almost 33% of adults are considered obese on the BMI. Take that with a grain of salt. If we can keep kids staying active, they have a longer term of continuing activity, fewer diseases, less chance of obesity. So this isn't necessarily about competition and about who's the best. What are we doing for those kids when they get to high school who just weren't good enough to play? And I think a lot of us were probably in that boat. We love playing sport, but maybe by the time we got to 9th grade, we just weren't good enough to play varsity. So what are we providing those opportunities for kids to continue to be active and active for life? And then last, and this was my favorite one, and this is the one I'm going to harp on. Learning to lose is part of growing up. This everyone gets a trophy BS is setting these kids up for failure. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to shift for a second because I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to come back to that comment there. All right. So a little bit about me. So Dr. Corey gave me a great introduction. Right now, I am finishing my doctorate, so very, very close to being done with this dissertation. Woohoo, can't wait. In sport leadership. And I specifically chose sport leadership for my path in graduate studies because growing up, I played sport. I played sport as a kid through middle school, high school, through college. And then I started coaching basketball when I was an undergrad in college and continued coaching at the middle school level, at the high school level, at the travel level, the club level, and then coached college basketball for about 6 years. And so my passion is sport and it's coaching. And I realized when I wanted to coach college sports that I needed to go back and I needed to get a master's degree. So I graduated from Indiana University in 2003 and then went to Ohio University and got my master's in science and recreation and sports science. And it was basically coaching education, coaching pedagogy. We're coaching the coaches. What have we learned through the research to help coaches coach better? And how can we develop athletes and develop athletes in a healthy way? And so I gave you some pictures of myself here over the years. Down here in the bottom left, this was probably the greatest fifth grade basketball team in the history of basketball. This was my team in Pike Township in Indianapolis. And that's me, number 4 there on the end in the back row. And we were undefeated. We were amazing. We won every game by about 20 points, won the championship and blew everybody out. I loved it because I am a competitive person. My first year ever playing sports, I was 5 years old and I was playing t-ball. And at the end of our first game, I go running up to the stands and I'm crying. And my mom asks, "What's wrong?" And I'm crying because we lost our first game, right? I got dirt on my face and it's turning into mud. I didn't even know which way to go in the base paths. I would hit the ball and I'd go to third base instead of first base. But I knew the other team crossed home plate more than us, and that made me mad. So I am a competitive person. That's why I'm going to kind of like make sure you know that before I get into some of the stuff that we're going to say. Billy Beane stole the line from me in Moneyball. I hate losing more than I enjoy winning. I said that way before he did. So I understand competition and I understand how important it is. I understand the value of it. But there's a way that we can do this to better develop kids. They can still be competitive, but we want to keep them active for life and we want to make sure that they're having fun. Again, going back to my question, are we having fun? And so growing up as an athlete and then finally had the opportunity to coach college basketball for 6 years after coaching kind of lower levels. And now I'm retired from coaching basketball. I've been a faculty member, been a professor for about the past decade. And it's great. I get the same opportunities to teach and to mentor, except I don't have to recruit, I don't have to scout, and I don't have to worry about getting fired because 18 to 22-year-olds aren't winning enough games for me. So now I just get to be dad and I get to coach my son Ryan there. And he's playing everything that you can imagine and get to coach him. And so a lot of the things that I've learned in the research that I've got to, read or be a part of, I get to use on him. So he's kind of the ultimate guinea pig. So let's get back to this comment. Learning to lose is part of growing up. This everyone gets a trophy BS is setting these kids up for failure, right? Well, obviously what we're doing, it's not working because there was a longitudinal study done. And when we talk to kids about their sport experience, again, 70% are dropping out by age 13. The number one reason it's consistent for both boys and girls, I was not having fun. Almost 40% say I was not having fun. And you can see some of the other reasons there. They kind of vary with boys and girls, they want to concentrate on their grades or I got hurt. But I think it's interesting when we look over here at boys for reason number 4 and then 5 for both boys and girls. I didn't get along with coach or I didn't get along with my teammates. So if you think about it, I didn't get along with coach, almost 60% of the reason why kids quit, we control. There's no reason. So I coach flag football right now. There's no reason kids should go back to their parents and say, "I don't get along with that coach." I'm coaching 4, 5, and 6-year-olds in flag football. All it should be is just mass chaos and fun. Everybody gets to play. Everybody gets to run the ball. Last game, I don't think we scored a touchdown, but everybody had a chance to participate. right? And so that is my role as a coach. No kid should be going back to their parent and saying, this isn't fun. You know, coach has us doing Oklahoma drills and I'm getting nailed and this is awful. No. All right. I am happy when I get my kids to run in the right direction. Like that's our biggest need right now. Right. So that's what it should be about. And so as I was thinking about this presentation, I'm trying to think of a framing question, and is this still fun for them? So courageous, compassionate leadership, it means putting the child's development, their joy, and their autonomy, it means putting that first, right? So you're going to get a lot of pressure as a parent. And I've been on both sides now as a parent, and not so much yet because my kid is only 6, but certainly when I was recruiting in college, you know, there's pressure. You got to get your kid into club sports, and they need to play year round, and they need to play on this team, and they need to go to this clinic and camp and all that, because it's our livelihood. It's our job to try to find the best players we can and get them into our system. Right? However, is that best for the kid? The question I always keep coming back to. Right? So youth sport should be about joy, movement, growth. It really shouldn't be about agendas. And so what I want to do, I'm going to do a deep dive. For some of you, this is the first time you've ever heard this stuff. For some of you, this might be old hat, right? So I want to take a few minutes. I want to do a deep dive. I want to kind of give you the diagnosis, what's going on, and then I'll give you what I think is the solution. So in the United States, 40 million kids play sport annually. But again, 70% are dropping out by the age of 13. And we talked about the number one reason is that it's no longer fun. So I want us to kind of reframe what youth sport should be about. And if we think about youth sport as a way to keep kids active, give them something they enjoy doing, give them some autonomy over something, because a lot of things that they do during the day, it's controlled by other people. You know, when you think about your child goes to school, teachers are really kind of controlling what they're doing. But here's an opportunity for a kid to kind of make a decision of what it is they want to do and kind of how they want to do it. And so I don't want physical activity to be something that my son hates. I want him to be able to run to it, because what we find with physically active children, as you kind of look at this infographic here, they're a tenth as likely to be obese, up to 40% higher on their test scores. So there is kind of some correlation there with physical activity and academic performance. They're less likely to get involved with smoking, drug use, pregnancy, risky sex, 15% more likely to go to college. They have lower levels of depression and self-deprecation, higher self-esteem. Their annual earnings are 7 to 8% higher than those who aren't physically active. Children aren't physically active. And I think it's interesting. I'm going to park my car there just for a second with that. There was a survey done of female CEOs, and somewhere around like 94% of female CEOs said that they grew up playing sports. Now, again, the correlation causation argument there, we can't necessarily say for sure that if your daughter plays youth sport, she's going to go on to be a CEO. But what I think it does show is that there's lessons that we learn in sport that we continue with us for the rest of our career. Things like time management, hard work, teamwork, dedication, self-sacrifice, how to continue to persist in light of setbacks. Like these are all great things kids can learn that they can continue in their career. I know I still use them. There's some times where I come up against things in my job and I think, you know what? If I could get through Tom Podgorski, my father, if I could get through his coaching, you know, I think I could probably get this report done in time. I'm going to figure it out. Right? So there's a level of grit that can come with sport as well. And that was an unfair shot at my dad. But if he was here, I would say it in front of him too. He was a great mentor, but probably could have learned a thing or two from this presentation. Lower health costs, they're more productive at work. And then what happens is this intergenerational cycle. So kids who stay active, they stay active as adults, and adults who stay active, parents stay active, their kids stay active, and we see the rate of disability goes down, compression of morbidity, and then just a reduction of heart disease, stroke, cancer, and diabetes. So it sets off this chain reaction when we can keep things fun, we keep things active, that just continues on generationally. It's really, really powerful. I just saw, okay, sorry, I lost my screen for a second. So continuing on this deeper dive here, what we're seeing with youth sport is this new area this new era of professionalization, where kids are treated like mini adults. Right? Um, Again, youth sport is a $40 billion industry. So we live here on the suburbs of Indianapolis, in one of the northwest suburbs of Indianapolis. And about 20 minutes down the road is one of the country's biggest youth sporting facilities. If you're familiar with youth sport or travel, you've been there at some point in time. They've got football fields, both indoor and outdoor, basketball pavilion, baseball field as far as the eye can see, softball fields as far as the eye can see, lacrosse field. I mean, you name the sport, they have it. And all year long, they're bringing in teams in tournaments, and they're bringing them in here. And so parents are paying a few $1,000s to get their kid on the club team, travel team. They're paying to travel, uniform, equipment. Once they get there, they nail you for parking. And there's no in and out privileges, and there's a mile to the closest restaurant. So you're probably paying for parking a couple times, and you have to pay an entrance fee to get in. Right? So parents are a few $1,000s in the hole on weekends to go to these things, with the hope that my kid will be one of the ones that'll play in college. So I'm here to burst some bubbles today, and I'm cool with that. Right? Only 6% of kids will play in college. And that's all level of college athletics: NCAA Division I, II, and III, NAIA, and junior college. Only 6% of high school athletes are going to play in college. It's not really good odds. Right? And the news gets even worse for the parents who think that their kid is going to get a full ride. Less than 2% of college athletes are going to go pro. Right? But when we look at that 6% will play in college number, only about 1 to 2% of high school athletes are actually going to get scholarship money or a full ride in college athletics. And this is made even harder. So if you, here in the past year, if you follow college athletics at all, there was the House versus NCAA that's been going through the courts, and there's been a recent settlement on this. And basically now with NIL and everything else that's going on in college athletics, there used to be what was called head count sports. And this was for NCAA Division I. So think your big schools, your Michigans, Michigan States, Notre Dame's, kind of there in your backyard. And in football, men's and women's basketball, and then a few other women's sport, there were guaranteed scholarships, full ride scholarships for athletes. Well, now because of the settlement and players being looked at more like employees instead of athletes, and kind of NCAA kind of skirting with some antitrust issues, now all sports are equivalency sports. So coaches are given a pot of money, and they can dish out that money however they want. And so coaches now, they're kind of looking at, what are my positional needs? So if I'm trying to get that starting quarterback for the University of Michigan, I'm going to give him a little bit more money than that third string linebacker. So now your chance of getting a full ride is even less than it was before the settlement with House versus the NCAA. Okay? So parents are paying exorbitant amounts of money to get their team into the right club sport. And for what? 7.8 million high school athletes in the US, only 2% of high school seniors get an athletic scholarship, and the average scholarship amount is $8,700. I mean, they won't even let you in the door of a state school now for $8,700. So again, what are we doing this for? What are we taking away our weekends for? Why are parents going into debt? What's the point? What's the end goal in all this? As we look at college athletes, there's about 500,000 of them, 30% in NCAA Division I, which are the big schools we all know about, 16% in NCAA Division II, 27% in NCAA Division III, and NCAA Division III is non-scholarship for athletics. So they're actually paying to play. So if they're at Olivet, they're paying to play. And then 28% for things like NAIA in junior college. So that's one issue that we're running up against now. Specialization is another one. So there's this idea that if my kid doesn't start in their sport and only do that sport from a young age, then they're not going to have the opportunity to play later, whether it be in high school, college, or pro. And so we kind of treat kids as mini adults. And if any of you know, you worked with kids, kids are different from adults. We have to train them different. We talk to them different. We relate to them different. We teach them differently. What this research is showing us, about 10% of youth and 10 to 35% of teen athletes suffer from burnout, to the point where it's emotional exhaustion, where they got to get away from their sport. And we're seeing overuse injuries, stress fractures, and concussions are all on the rise. So some of the other statistics that I wanted to go with this, with burnout, is in the last 10 years, ACL tears in soccer players are up 400%, because we play and play and play and play and play. We're not kind of periodizing our training. We're not doing training, recovery, competition. It's just play, 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 play. Right? 50 to 80% of volleyball injuries are from overuse. 91, almost every swimmer between the age of 13 to 25 has an episode of shoulder pain. And we start those kids off early, and they're training twice a day. Playing competitive baseball for 8 months in a row without a break, you have 5 times the risk of surgery on your shoulder and elbow. Kids as young as 12 years old are getting Tommy John surgery, which is we're doing surgery on the elbow, which is only reserved for professional pitchers. It's crazy. We would put a kid through trauma like that. And playing through fatigue, it increases the risk of injury by 36 times. Okay? So what I'm telling you with specialization is that the research shows us kids who are multi-sport athletes have longer, in the long term, especially as they get older, they're shown to have fewer injuries, they're less prone to burnout, and they perform better athletically. So specialization does not mean you're going to all of a sudden just be an amazing athlete. As we look at the costs, and I talked about this just a little bit ago, only 24% of 6 to 12-year-olds from homes with $25,000 or less, so kind of those below the poverty line, played sport regularly. And nearly 20% of parents go into debt to afford sports, which just blows my mind. And so this has been another kind of limiting thing for families, is that everybody growing up, at least in my generation growing up, we all kind of played recreational sport. You could pay a few bucks, you get a t-shirt, you go on your rec team with your friends in your neighborhood, and you would go out and play. Well, now a lot of those opportunities, one, if they're not around, they're kind of expensive. It costs us about $125 to put my kid in t-ball or in flag football. Right? Thank God I have the ability, my wife and I have the ability to afford that. But that's a lot of money to play on a sport where the kids don't even go the right way. They don't even know what they're doing, right? We're just out there supposed to have fun, but we're spending all this money. And it's even worse when we take the best training and the best teams and we limit it to those who can only afford it. So that means a lot of kids are falling off by the wayside. They're not going to have the opportunity to even get to that point where they're 13 years old to drop out of sport. Right? And if we look at annual family spending on sport per season, this is for one child per season, we're getting close to about $1,000. So let's say if you have 3 kids and they're playing 3 different sports, you're spending almost $9,000 a year for those kids. Again, what's it for? Is it for their fun, for their development, or are we trying to do it for us as parents? Is there another reason? Okay, so that's the bad news, right? But I do have good news. I promise. I have good news for you. So how can we kind of redefine what courageous leadership in youth sport looks like? Some things we can do as parents and coaches. Say no to the year-round pressure. Now, if your kid comes to you and says, hey, I love this particular sport. We'll go back to swimming. I love swimming. I don't want to do anything else but swimming. I just want to be in the pool. I'm not here to tell you that if they don't also play basketball, they don't do track, or they don't do tennis, they're not going to be a well-rounded athlete. What I am going to tell you is that we need to periodize things. Okay, son, okay, daughter, you can do swimming, but we're going to train. You'll have your season of competition, and then we're going to rest. We're going to recover. If you go to the United States Olympic Training Center out in Colorado Springs, they have an entire department, an entire building, and it's phenomenal, dedicated to recovery, because they know how important that is. Even Olympians take time off, right? You need it mentally, you need it physically. It's really, really important, right? So we're going to say no to the year-round pressure, right? We're going to delay contact sport until their teen years, which might seem a little bit crazy, but there's a lot of wisdom in holding off on things like tackle football or hitting and checking in hockey until they become teenagers. Because what we find, concussions are on the rise. When a child gets a concussion, they are almost twice as more likely to get a second. And concussions are a traumatic brain injury. And we're seeing kids to the point now where they've been hit so many times, they're almost kind of punch drunk boxers by the time they get to college. And I would never call that out on anyone, but I've taught them, right? It's really, really depressing to see. And then 3, we want to redefine success around joy, growth, and effort, not winning in scholarships. The first question I always ask my son after he plays is, did you have fun? Right? Did you have fun? When I bring the team in at the end of the game, I say, hey, did you guys have fun? Yeah! Right? What did we learn? And everybody goes and tells me what we learned that day. Right? So I'm focused on joy. I'm focusing on growth. And I'm telling them, hey, just do your best. And you do that and you have fun. And so far, I'm batting 1,000 on all that. So all this stuff must be working. And I love this quote from Magic Johnson. All kids need is just a little help, a little hope, and somebody who believes in them. That's really all they need. And he did a pretty good job of breaking that down. And so something to remember, right? What does compassion and action look like? And remember the acronym FEAST. And if you grew up as a kid in the 80s in elementary school, this was a feast. This was the greatest day of the week when it was pizza day at school, because I was getting pizza and I was getting a ginger cookie and an apple. I would not eat the carrots, but I had to include something here in this picture, and milk. This was the greatest feast I could get as a kid. And so this was an easy way for me to remember what I need to do as a coach. And what the acronym stands for is feedback, right? When we're talking with youth athletes, feedback, it needs to be specific, encouraging, and honest. Never use sarcasm with the kid because they don't necessarily understand it and they're going to kind of take it literally, right? Feedback, be specific. I need you to do this. And kids are very, very literal. So, right? So be specific with what it is that you need them to do, right? Be honest with them, right? You don't have to lie, right? But we could be honest in a very encouraging way. And then we also want to be encouraging. 2, emotional connection. You got to build emotional connection in team bonds. So start of every practice, the first thing we do is do some type of activity where the kids have to share their name and we're partnering them up or we're putting them in a circle and everybody's saying their name because kids don't remember, right? And that's okay, right? Now, as they get older, they start to do that. But when they're young, we're going to do fun things to kind of make that emotional connection. Right? They're going to buddy up and like you're going to ask him what his favorite cartoon is, and then he's going to ask you yours, and then we're going to share it. And then as they get older, we can manipulate that a little bit to make it a little bit more appropriate for older athletes to make those emotional connections. Right? And it could just be doing something as simple as, hey, you were the star. We're going to have a heart of the week. Right? Who showed the most heart in practice? And we're going to have our team captain. They're going to award that heart of the week. And usually it's going to go to a player. Maybe they don't get as much playing time, but they show up every day and give their best in practice, right? Emotional connection. Autonomy support. We want to offer autonomy. And this could be hard to do for kids because, my son still doesn't know what a light switch is and how to turn it on and off, right? So it can be hard to say, okay, I want you to help lead something, but it can be really simple for kids. Hey, you choose the drill we're going to do this practice. You choose the warm-up music. You choose where we're going to eat after the game. Okay? Give them a little bit of autonomy, a little bit of ownership, and you're going to just be surprised at what they're able to pick up. Stimulation, keep things stimulatory. So they got to be creative and they get fun. As we get older, athletes' needs change once they get to high school, college, and professional athletics. We're getting to the point now where we're working on performance and we're working on, hey, I need to get better. We've got these specific outcome goals and I need to get better at these. When we're talking about younger kids, stimulation looks a lot different. So what does fun look like? So my son's t-ball coach this past year did a great job of this, where he gave everybody just kind of fun nicknames. All right, hey, you're ice cream. Hey, you're chocolate cake, right? And things that we do with our team right now to teach them like how to pull flags in flag football. We're going to do it using sharks and minnows. right? We're not going to do drills. We're not getting out cones. We're going to keep it fun. We're going to use it. We're going to use games. And then finally, teaching prowess, right? You've got to teach with active instructions. And I like to use the 3 E's. I don't know if I came up with this, but I like to think I came up with this. I'm going to explain, I'm going to example, and then I'm going to allow them to explore. So I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to explain how to do it. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to let you do it. And I'm going to let you fail, and I'm going to let you develop, and I'm going to be right there along the way to help you along with it. All right, so as we start to wrap up here, one of the other pieces of advice that I would give to you, the car ride home after a game. Right? It could be the worst place for kids because now it's chalk talk time. And my dad, for as good as a coach as he was, we would get in the car, and the first thing I would hear, and I would cringe, son, I want to give you some constructive criticism. Well, as a kid, all I hear is the word criticism. Like, I don't need to be told that, yeah, I didn't get my glove down on that ground ball, which is why it popped up and gave me a black eye. Right? Like, I know, Dad, I've got the evidence, right? So the best thing you can do on that car ride home is say nothing. Let your kid bring it up. And if you really want to say something, there's 5 words that are really kind of, I think, transformational. I love watching you play. That's all they really want to hear. Right? And then if they bring it up and they want to talk about it, now you have your opening to where, okay, well, this is what you can do to maybe kind of get a little better at this. Right? But let your child bring it up. Right? It doesn't need to be chalk talk time because especially if they're older, they're teenagers, they've already heard it from the coach. It's like, I just want to kind of be in a place where I know I'm safe and I can just kind of decompress. Right? So just kind of a little emotional intelligence there. So compassion and action. Resist that over involvement. I love watching you play. So instead of that old sport parent where the car ride is the unsolicited TED talk on your technique and why you keep slicing the ball into the woods, the new sport parent, hey, it's a Chick-fil-A stop and you got the aux cable. You choose the music that you want to, right? I promise your kids will come around. They will ask, but just give them time to decompress. I'm the same way after a hard day at work. The last thing I would want is after a hard day of work, get in my car and my wife to be there and be like, boy, you did a really bad job in that presentation today. You remember that one slide you didn't put in that, you put something in the notes and you didn't actually explain it. Yeah, you got to be better next time. Like, yeah, I know. Right? So think about it through that lens there. So I want to challenge you with 3 questions as we wrap up. Think about compassion in action. Am I putting the child's joy and development first? Am I viewing youth sport through a kid's eyes or adult's expectations? And 3, am I contributing to the problem or redesigning the solution? So in redesigning the solution, this is the last thing I'm going to leave you with. My son wanted to play flag football this year. He's never played flag football before. And so we sign up, and as part of this, he got to go to a clinic held by the Indianapolis Colts. And there are about 200 kids there from kindergarten up through middle school, and they split them. And he was like in the kindergarten through 3rd grade group, and then there was like a 4th grade through middle school group, which is a huge, kindergarten through 3rd grade is a huge kind of grade range, right? And they're not equal. And it got to the point there weren't enough coaches. Kids were standing in line. There wasn't individual attention. They weren't able to really coach and like explain, explore, coach. And so they asked him to be the center. And you'll see in this first video, you're going to hear him say, I don't want to hike the ball. And then you're going to see what he does when he got to the point where he was just done. And we're doing nothing. Right? So I had to figure a way. I was really concerned because I'm like, boy, if that was his first experience football, he may not actually want to play on his team. So what can I do to make it fun using all the knowledge that I have? And so I enlisted the help of the family dog, and we're going to make football a little bit more fun. So we're going to learn how to tackle and pull flags using the family dog.
There we go. Got one of his flags.
Okay. Much happier kid. So I know we're up against it time-wise. I want to be respectful of our next speaker. I did get one question. Does your research on kids sport apply to kids who are involved in dancing in the studio? I would say there are a lot of kind of overlaps with that. Yeah, now I haven't looked at non-sport specifically. Most of the research has been sport-based, but I think you're going to find a lot of kind of overlap in that as well. So stop that. And then Kelly, I know we're up against it time-wise, so I'll kind of turn it over to you. If we have time for questions, great. If not, I'll wrap it up and people can contact me through email.
Brandon, we do need to wrap it up, but I want to thank you so much. You know, I'm sitting here and I'm reliving those car rides, and I'm going to send both my boys Chick-fil-A cards in the mail because I'm like, boy, I could have really, really blown it. They grew up to be amazing humans.
Yes, they did.
But yeah, it's a hard, yeah, the whole dynamic is difficult, and I appreciate you putting things in just very real terms for all of us wherever we are in that ecosystem to help our kids find joy. That's super, super important. So thank you so much, and best wishes to you in the work that you're doing. And I hope we have opportunities to learn together some more. Have a great rest of your year, and thanks to all of our participants and our questions. I did get a super long question, and I'm going to encourage Kelly, who put it in the chat, to put it into our leadership our leadership learning community. And so it's a discussion forum we have, and I may forward it on to you, and maybe you could get us some feedback on that. So if you have other questions for Brandon, I can bundle them up and send them off. We so appreciate your expertise and your passion for the sport and for being a great mentor to all of us and to all of those kids out there that are trying to make points and score goals and find joy.
All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Kelly.
You. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be transitioning to our next program. It'll take us about 2 minutes.